Hi, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I built my On18 micro layout. This is set in the American Southwest, and this will be a detailed overview of the Ute Creek On18 mini layout. This is part 1. Chapter 1. Concept and inspiration behind the On18 layout. Now, I've got previous model railroading experience. In the 90s, I built an HO layout, and I still have it. And with the help of others, I built an N-scale 2x4 layout for our model railroading club. And for the last few decades, I've constantly been building structures. But I knew very little about narrow gauge railroading, and I had to do some research. What I found, in the 19th century, narrow gauge railroads were somewhat prolific, especially in mountainous and rugged terrains where they were less expensive to build and could navigate sharper curves. And they were used for both industrial and transportation needs. And don't you love the size difference between narrow gauge and standard gauge in this photo? One of my first decisions was going to be what my narrow gauge railroad was for. I didn't want it to be for transportation purposes, so industrial was the way to go. But which industry? I could do a logging railroad, I could do a coal operation such as the East Broad Top, or I could create a mining railroad that was common in Colorado and the Southwest. Now, the origins of the layout idea are threefold. I had an interest in narrow gauge railroading that had been developing, and I was starting to show an interest in Southwest U.S. gold mining history as well. And this would be a mini layout. Its primary purpose would be to take to shows and put on a table to attract attention. Now, what's a mini layout? Mini layouts in narrow gauge offer a compact yet fully functional model railroad experience. These layouts, often under 4 square feet, still provide clear purpose and operational capability. They can include various themes like industrial, mining, or dockside settings, and feature elements like dual gauge tracks or unique locales. Perfect for those with limited space or looking to explore narrow gauge modeling on a small scale. Last January, there was a meeting of the Micro Madness group. And while this wasn't the first time I was introduced to micro layouts, it was the first time I had seen so many in one place. And these are some of the layouts that were at the micro meet. Trust me, there were a lot more than this. And I've also attended the Harrisburg Narrow O show for a number of years. And there are usually quite a few micro layouts in narrow gauge at this show. And you can tell how my interest was picking up each year as I took more and more photos. By 2023, I was still taking photos of the show, but I started narrowing in on a couple of layouts that I found interesting. By 2024, I was looking forward to see some of the layouts that I remembered from previous years, and I even became part of the show as I helped Al Judy and Chris Corse with the door prize drawings. And by 2025, I had become fully immersed in the narrow gauge micro layout world. And I took a lot of photos. These are only a few of them. And I had also taken my infant layout to the show just to get people's opinion of it. And it's the first time that I brought home any narrow gauge items. I picked up some books and a couple of cars and a structure. But I have to say I had other inspirations as well. One of them was Dave Meek's Thunder Mesa studio. He's got a large YouTube presence, and he builds lots of different layouts in narrow gauge. And they're primarily set in the American Southwest, and I find them all fascinating. Another inspiration were John Ford's Westerns. I grew up watching them, and I got a special insight after reading Harry Carey Jr.'s book called Company of Heroes, which was all about John Ford's stock actor troupe. And like many people of my age, I can't deny that I had some inspiration from watching the Roadrunner and Coyote cartoons when I was a child. Now, my design goals, I had three things in mind. First, it had to be easily transportable. It had to remain lightweight with everything securely attached except for the structures and the rail equipment. It had to be able to run with or without power. And that meant it would either be dead rail or have a dual power pack. And it had to have a gold mine infrastructure representation, depicting gold mine elements with a compact On18 scale as much as possible, but embracing the whimsy of micro layouts. Chapter 2. Track Plan and Operational Features. In figuring my overall track arrangement, I had all of these elements, and they were given to me by my friend Steve Sherrill, and he had told me to just build a layout out of it. Now, how do you fit a track plan onto a 2x2 square piece of foam? Well, I got out my old radius gauge from when I built my HO layout 30 years ago and tried putting an oval in the middle of the square. And I knew I could go all the way down to an 8-inch radius curve. So I played with a straight oval and an egg shape, but I didn't like the look of any of them. But I had a eureka moment. I remembered from building all the dioramas that I've done that it's often more interesting to have a building at a slight angle, and I thought I'd try that with my track plan. So I played with different turnout arrangements, and I tried the re-railer in place, and I settled with one turnout, but the re-railer didn't make it onto the layout. And I knew for a curve that tight, I was going to have to solder my flex track. So I brought it to my workbench and soldered 2 sets of flex track together so that I was able to make my 2 curves. Now I pinned them down to my piece of foam and tried it with an N-scale truck, and that testing went well. It was very smooth over the gap. The next thing I did was I soldered the electrical feeders onto the bottom of the track. And that went well. But when testing it, I had a little hiccup. I didn't know that my transformer had failed on me, and as soon as you move the lever, it goes to 100%, or 12 volts. And as soon as I moved that lever, the little Kato drive went flying off the track and onto my concrete floor. But it's a tough little bugger, and it survived. So I cut a pocket in the piece of foam where I was going to have the feeders. And then I started gluing my track down. I'd use pins to hold it in place after putting glue under it, and then I'd put weights on it until the glue had set. And it went very quick, and I have 3/4 of my oval down already. I just left the one part on the far side unglued. And I left that part loose because I knew I wanted to put in a dry wash with a timber support. So using my X-Acto knife, I cut in a dry wash and then used a couple pieces of 4x4 strip wood, and I stained those, and they were going to be my support. Once I finished gluing down all of the track and attaching it to the turnout, I was done with laying track. And I was going to move on to building the rail equipment. And as before, I didn't have a lot of knowledge about what I was doing. Chapter 3. Rolling stock and equipment specific to the layout. Now these are the equipment pieces that Steve had given me. The two body parts are from Ute Creek Designs, and it also included a Cato mini drive, and that would fit into the Shea locomotive. It was very generous of him to give these to me. I decided to work on the caboose first. I cleaned all of the 3D printed parts, and I had two different sets of trucks to choose from. One set was 3D printed from Ute Creek, and the other set were standard N gauge, and I like the 3D printed ones on the left better. So I first started by painting all of the caboose parts. I took them into my spray booth and primed them with the Vallejo German red-brown primer. And then after they dried, I brush painted all of the parts of the caboose. And the detail parts that I added included the link and pin couplers and some stirrups that I had laying around, that even though they were HO scale, they fit perfect. And assembly was very straightforward. I just used CA to glue all the parts together, and then I weathered it, putting some rust on the rivets and some of the other metal parts. Then I started on the locomotive, and it had come already primed in black. And all I did was mount the link and pin couplers, and the chassis was a press fit onto the Cato drive. And then I took the ore cars that I had bought at the Harrisburg show and assembled them. They went together real easily just using super glue, and I installed the link and pin couplers on them as well. Then I airbrushed them with the same color I'd used on the caboose, but I was going to keep them in that shade. And then I used some brown Activa to represent the ore that would be stuck in the cars that they were carrying from the mine. And I went ahead and used some decals that I had to number my ore cars as if they were part of a big fleet. Then I started weathering the loco. I used some oil paints and also some pan pastels on this, and made it look like it had been well used. And I even spent some time detailing the links. I glued some rivets onto them and rusted them as well. Chapter 4. Structures and Detailing Techniques. While I was at the 2025 Harrisburg Narrow O show, I met Calvin Witt. This young man from California has an incredible line of laser-cut buildings that he produces himself, and he had brought a number of them to the show. I picked up the O-scale blacksmith shop for $5, which is an incredible deal. And this is what comes in the package. I had gotten a medium size one, which has medium depth sidewalls. And it comes with beautifully laser cut wood and windows and doors and a roof. The first thing I did was I distressed the wood a little bit, and then I weathered the wall with stains, and for the laser board I dry brushed on a chalky parchment paint that I had thinned, and this gives it a worn appearance. And then I just assembled the building as you would any wooden kit, adding the windows, the doors, and the sign and the roof. And I had made the sign on my computer using AI. And after gluing on the supports, I did the final weathering. And I like to use artist pigments for that. Now, because I liked that building so much, I ordered 2 more kits from his Etsy site. And one of the things I got was a small shed where you get 2 structures for $16 with free shipping. And this shows what comes in that package. And that's an incredible deal. So just like the first one, I distressed the wood and added wood grain, and then I stained it to bring out some of the texture. And then, as the other one, I made the windows dirty by applying a very thin down wash of burnt umber. And I even had one of the windows with broken glass, and it was boarded up. And I decided to put a metal roof on this one. So I got some of my paper corrugated roofing, and I used Mission Models rust washes on it to give it a rusty appearance. And then I glued it in place after putting some joists on the roof. And as before, I did my weathering on this building, again using artist pigments. So now I had my office and my work shed that were ready to go on the layout. So where are we now? We have our track glued down. We have our rail equipment done and ready to run. And we have our structures built. So we're almost done at this point, right? Well, not quite. So this is the end of part 1. And in part 2, you'll discover why it's called the Ute Creek Railroad. I hope you come back for that. And I want to thank you for watching.